This video was brought to you by Nebula. For the past few years, Sweden has been gripped by an escalating gang crime crisis. Shootings and bombings have become increasingly common, and only last month, a gang member hurled a hand grenade into a shop, injuring a number of bystanders and requiring one woman in her 50s to be airlifted to hospital. Now, despite the Swedish government's best efforts, crime rates are still well above the historical norm, and the crisis has now apparently spilled over into Denmark, where 3 Swedish citizens have been charged with attempted murder in just the past few weeks, prompting the Danish justice minister to float closing their border with Sweden. So in this video, we're going to take a look at Sweden's ongoing crime crisis, why it's spilled over into Denmark, and how it's affecting Sweden's domestic politics. Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos. So, let's start with a bit of context. We've done a whole video on Sweden's ongoing crime crisis before, so go and watch that if you want to learn a bit more detail. But the TLDR is that violent and sexual crime has been on the rise in Sweden since the mid-2010s. And by some measures, Sweden has gone from being one of the safest countries in Europe to being one of the most dangerous. Since 2013, Sweden's firearm homicide rates have essentially tripled, and in 2023, over 60 people were killed by guns. This means that Sweden saw more firearm homicides than the rest of Scandinavia combined, with the highest per capita rate anywhere in Europe. Similarly, according to the latest Swedish crime survey, the fraction of Swedes self-reporting exposure to a sexual offence is more than twice as high as it was in the 2000s. And this increase has been particularly acute with women, with the number of women self-reporting exposure to a sexual offence quadrupling in that time. Unsurprisingly then, crime has become one of, if not the dominant issue in Swedish politics, with the right and most of the centre blaming it on immigration, and the left blaming it on a failure to effectively integrate the new migrants and the wider decimation of the Swedish welfare state. For context, immigration into Sweden really started accelerating in the 2000s and hit a peak during the mid-2010s. According to data from 2023, roughly 20% of Sweden's population, or about 2 million people, were born abroad, nearly double the EU average of 12%. A further 5% have 2 foreign-born parents, and about 3%, roughly 250,000 people, are refugees. As of 2020, Sweden had the 9th most refugees per capita globally, and the 2nd highest in Europe after Malta. Now, the right blame this crime crisis on these high immigration and asylum rates, pointing out that the majority of violent crimes are committed by immigrants. Of those committed for gun crimes since 2017, 85% were born abroad or had at least one parent who was, and a similar fraction of gang members apparently have an immigrant background. Now, while few on the left actually deny these statistics, they argue that the real problem isn't migration per se, rather the fact that the Swedish welfare state has been steadily gutted since the 90s, with government spending as a percentage of GDP falling from 70% to less than 50%. This has both reduced the state's capacity to integrate new migrants and exacerbated wealth inequality. To be fair to the left here, Sweden's Gini coefficient, which effectively measures income inequality, has gone from about 0.23 in the 80s, one of the lowest, if not the lowest in the world, to 0.34 today, higher than the European average. Anyway, crime was a dominant issue for voters in the 2022 election, with a 41% plurality of Swedes saying it was their number one issue. And as a result, after the election, Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson made it his top priority to sort out. Perhaps the most notable thing since then is that in April, the government passed a new law allowing police to create so-called security zones, where police can stop and search any citizen without cause. Unfortunately for Kristersson, things haven't quite panned out as he hoped. So far this year, there have been 148 shootings, which have killed 20 and injured 26. Now, this is below the average of the past few years, but not by much, and there's a sense that the violence is becoming more indiscriminate, resulting in more bystanders getting hurt or killed. On top of that, over the past few days, the violence has apparently spilled into Denmark. In just the past week or so, there have been at least 3 attempted murders committed by Swedish teens in Copenhagen and the seaport of Kolding, who have apparently been paid to commit these crimes by Danish gangs, offering rewards via TikTok. According to the Danish Justice Minister, criminal groups have hired teenagers, or in his words, child soldiers, from Sweden to commit crimes on Danish territory on some 25 occasions in the past 4 months. In response to this phenomenon, the Danish government has started talking about closing the Denmark-Sweden border, where the main border crossing is the Worsens Bridge, which has been completely open since the Schengen in 2001. On Wednesday, the Danish Justice Minister said that we do not want an extremely violent tendency in Swedish gang circles to spread to Denmark under any circumstances, and refused to rule out shutting the border. This wouldn't be entirely unprecedented either. Something similar happened in November 2019 when Denmark imposed temporary border controls after 2 Swedish nationals set off a bomb outside the Danish tax agency, and 5 others killed people in Copenhagen. Nor would it be particularly surprising, given that the Social Democrats, who are in charge in Denmark right now, were also in charge in 2019, and that they pursued a conspicuously conservative policy on social issues like immigration and the rule of law. For context, the Social Democrats used to be a bog-standard centre-left party with a liberal immigration policy, but have shifted right on social issues since the late 2010s to squeeze out the far-right anti-immigrant Danish People's Party, who became the second biggest party in the Danish parliament in 2015. The Social Democrats have, at various times, considered deporting asylum seekers to a remote island, sending them to have their applications processed in Rwanda, and have even proposed revoking residence permits for Syrian refugees on the grounds that there are parts of Syria that are apparently safe now. Leaving aside the ethics of these policies, it was an immensely successful electoral tactic. While other centre-left parties were struggling across Europe, the Social Democrats won the most seats in the 2015, 2019 and 2022 elections. Anyway, if this were to happen, this would be yet another erosion of the Schengen area, which was supposed to guarantee borderless travel between its member states. An increasing number of states have already reimposed border restrictions over the past few years due to escalating concerns about immigration, organised crime and terrorism, putting strain on one of the EU's flagship achievements and provoking more conversations about the sustainability of Europe's current immigration policies. Now, you can keep diving deeper into this and other news stories over on Nebula, where the TLDR team curates the most important news videos from around the world, saving you from a deluge of bad news and helping you pay attention to what really matters. This means no more feeling out of touch. On Nebula News, the TLDR team act as your guide through the media landscape, sharing the news that we're paying attention to and helping you to find the stories that matter and avoid burnout. Now, if you don't know already, Nebula is a streaming service that we co-own with a bunch of your favourite creators. There, you can watch original content like Real Life Law's incredible series War Room, which every month runs you through a whole load of ongoing conflicts, keeping you in the loop. You can also watch every TLDR video on Nebula ad-free, and in many instances, before they land on YouTube. If you're not a member already, then you can click the link in the description to sign up now. And if you do, you'll get 40% off an annual plan by using our link. Plus, Nebula will know that you came from us, which really helps us out. We've got some great feedback from existing members on the Nebula News features, so I hope you enjoy the effort that we're putting into Nebula News.